I think that the biggest thing, and I know the crowd today is not mostly institutions. I'm mostly talking about this work with institutions, but I think that the important thing to kind of think about, if this is something where, if your role is someone who can help influence an institution in this direction, help support an institution to launch some of this work, is really having them really take some serious consideration about the cultural change at their institution, because it does take some dedicated folks to really think about why this is important and why it really helps students, and not really think about the social service aspect of it and any personal aspects of it, to really make sure that students can progress in this way, and how it's really helpful for students to really complete their degrees and stay funded to get to that end goal.
Before we turn it over to Mark, Ellen, did you want to talk briefly about this?
Sure. I just wanted to flag, because both Angela and I have mentioned benefits access for college completion, but neither of us defined what it was. And it was a multi-year initiative funded at 7 community colleges across the country to provide seed funding to those institutions to start providing benefits access to low-income students, with a big goal on sustainability right out of the gate, because there was concern that once the money went away, would the services go away? And so how do we figure out how to build this into existing college processes so it just becomes a part of everyday business? And to plug another paper that'll be out in another month or so, we're going to have a lessons learned paper from that initiative that'll be coming out. But Cuyahoga was a very successful participant in that initiative.
Mark.
Thank you. Well, first I want to congratulate CLASP on the publication, and Amy on the publication of today's paper, and for the work that you've done in this area. It's so important for students and for our nation in terms of being able to maintain opportunity. The PIOC study, the Program for International Assessment of Adult Competencies, indicates there are 36 million low-skilled adults in this country, 2/3 of whom are working. And as the economy continues to improve, the opportunity cost of going to college only will continue to rise. So anything that we can do collectively to enable, to help our lowest income individuals in our country to be able to access post-secondary education is critical and important. And so thank you again to CLASP for the work that you're doing to illuminate how different funding streams can be leveraged in order to help folks access post-secondary education. Prior to coming to this position, I was a community college president at North Seattle Community College. And while I was there, we opened an integrated one-stop called the Opportunity Center for Employment and Education, and co-located and integrated employment security, DSHS, and the local WIB, plus the community college, and about 20 different CBOs. And we had Goodwill in the house. We had Air Washington, which was a TAC program, Literacy Source, YWCA, and others, to wrap services and funding around students, but also the local community, in order to help folks move out of poverty and into the middle class through education. And as Angela mentioned, so many of the lessons learned were hard fought, and that's another reason I'm thankful to CLASP for the access to the public benefits access project, to create a playbook for other institutions to follow. And so you don't have to go through it. There wasn't a great project like that when we got started. We would love to have seen that. So what we learned, though, was the importance of cross-training. That not only was it important for the community college staff to understand SNAP and WIOA and the other funding sources, it's also important for case managers to understand Pell. And I'll give you a quick example. More than once, I'd seen a case manager come up to the financial aid desk with a client and say, where's the check? And it often didn't end well. As you know, let's say SNAP, for example, education and training, is great for helping to get students started. If the case manager wasn't aware that the FAFSA is the starting point for applying for financial aid. After that comes the student aid report. After that comes the completion of the student's financial aid application file. Most financial aid offices have created checklists so that students know what kind of documentation they need to provide. What worked a lot better is if a case manager knew about the checklist and could be, while the person is getting started on SNAP, could work with the student to remind them, hey, did you get that IRS form in? Did you get this in? It worked much better than when a case manager came up to the financial aid desk with a completed file and said, okay, SNAP is about to run out, here's Pell. Made the application process a lot more streamlined, so when SNAP ran out, boom, they could slip right into Pell, they could keep on going. Without that kind of integration, the student didn't get the funding, disappeared, we never saw it again. And so a key point, learning point for us at North Seattle was the importance of cross-training for folks to administer the different federal funding streams so they could learn about the nuances and the rules relative to each funding stream.
Mark, just can I interrupt just for my part of my ignorance, but so this is a case manager for the, say, the SNAP first.
Yeah.
And who isn't a college employee? Or
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So that's part of the reason for having these CBOs in the house, right? Because many of them are the intermediaries for federal funding. And so we got them together, they participated in cross-training, case managers learned about Pell, financial aid folks learned about EOA, and so they got a better understanding of what the requirements were. That, in addition to everything Angela mentioned, was an important learning point for us in that experiment. You probably have never experienced this in your own context, but getting 3 different state agencies to play together could sometimes be a challenge, and actually this came about as a result of state legislation. It was a pilot project mandated by state legislation and brought everybody to the table, and it took a while to, it took about 9 to 12 months of cross-training where folks had a better understanding of each other's systems. And once they got there, and we worked to really integrate the CBOs plus all the different state agencies into the culture of the college, then it began to really roll. So that was sort of my personal introduction to the topic, and we saw what a difference it made for students in terms of being able to have a roof over your head, tuition paid for, food on the table, books in your backpack. More than one homeless student entered the center and then graduated 3 years later. And so I think that's what you're talking about here, right? You're talking about more students being able to do that across the country. So I'd like to switch to sort of the federal level, talk a little bit about what's happening there in both financial aid, but in some other interagency work. And as Doug mentioned and Amy mentioned, we've been able to increase Pell Grants in this administration, and the maximum award has increased by $1,000, funding by a significant percentage, the implementation of the American Opportunity Tax Credit as well. Early on, Bipartisan Student Loan Certainty Act, 2013, to help stabilize those loans, but then we transitioned to the direct loan program to keep interest rates lower and to save money that could then be reinvested in Pell Grants. The pay-as-you-earn is part of the income-based repayment and income contingent repayment initiative. And in a couple days, there will be an announcement about the new website to help all of our direct loan borrowers transition and pay with that PYE. The Fafsa Improvements can be confusing, definitely. So the IRS data retrieval tool was established so that there could be an automatic population parts of the FAFSA. Many of our financial aid guides have been translated into different languages. The partial restoration in 2015, I should say the new provisions around ability to benefit in 2015 helped to reopen a door that had been closed earlier for students without high school credentials, and we're working to increase adoption of the new provisions across the country. There also, in the 2016 budget, was a proposal for reform for the campus-based aid allocation formula, including federal work study, so that so that institutions that serve more Pell-eligible students would receive a greater percentage of the existing funds. No new money, but a reformulation that would allow for reallocation of resources. You also have heard, I'm sure, about America's College Promise, the President's proposal in the 2016 budget to make universal access to community colleges the norm, where 75% of the average national cost of community college tuition would be paid by the federal government, 25% matched by the states, and states would opt in to the program. That, of course, is a first-in model, so that students would still be eligible for Pell and that would help meet the additional costs, of course, that students have. And so we're, of course, interested in getting bipartisan support for that. First in the World also came out and we've been able to award $60 million in the last year, including to some community colleges, to develop innovative strategies for student success. We recently, Amy